alone for 2 hours and he does all the work.
Yeah,
Yep.
right?
Hey, do you think after he does his self-diagnostic, he goes like, ding,
Yes.
I'm done.
Yes.
Fries are done.
Fries are done.
And they couldn't figure out, as he says, why he had a behavioral anomaly. Data just breaks it down to Geordi and it's like, hey, I think I was angry. And Geordi's like, I mean, are you sure? And then, Data says, well, what does it feel like to be angry? And I'm giving way too much inflection for Data. Or am I? No. Sorry. I'm laughing at my own jokes, you guys. This is an everyday thing for me. But, so Geordi tries to explain what it feels like to be angry, but can't really explain what it feels like to be angry for someone who doesn't know what any kind of feelings are or what any kind of emotion. You can't explain it. You can't work that way. So he just said, I just feel angry, and he does this little hand motion, and so Data is like, well, I just felt angry, and he did the same sort of motion, but of course the genius of Brent Spiner, he can do it and still be sort of robotic and like he's mimicking Geordi, but not as fluid as like a human. So he's very good at sort of walking that line on the uncanny valley for being a human who's playing an android. He does such a good job making you think he is one most of the time.
But this scene is very interesting because often like the scenes between Geordi and Data are always so interesting because it's Data trying to understand humanity, it's Geordi trying to explain it to him, and it's a really great question of Data saying, what is it like to get angry? And I thought to myself, if I had to tell somebody without using other feelings what it was like to be angry, I don't think I could do it. Like, it's hard to describe a feeling without referencing other feelings. It's like if somebody who is colorblind asks, what does the color red look like? How do you describe that? Like, how do you have no point of reference?
Yeah.
But like I really enjoyed this little scene of Data trying to understand anger and Geordi trying to explain it to him. But sometimes there is no explaining emotions. You just have them.
Yeah, and that goes to where he just says, I just felt angry. That's just, you can't explain it. And, because, he used, like, contempt and frustrate, all these kind of words to mean angry, but he couldn't figure out how to explain it to Data. But, so Data, feels like he's had his first real emotion. I saw a couple places where they were like, no, that's wrong, because in, Who I think is the title of the episode, Q makes him laugh, and then he said, oh, that felt good. But feelings and emotions aren't necessarily the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Right.
there is a scene where Q there's that episode Q gives Data a gift because Q was like human for a while and Data was like his guide and showing him around, whatever, and he gives Data the gift to laugh. Like really belly laugh and just feel laughter for that one moment, but then that's it. So I guess like, yeah, you could say maybe, but
yeah,
I think the sensation of laughing with no reference, I mean, that just makes you the Joker.
Yeah.
It doesn't really make you like feel funny. I think I would agree that this is actually Data's first emotion.
Yeah.
Where he actually feels something and then acts on that feeling.
Yeah, I can see that. It's like you keep using the word reference, which is the perfect word, because he has no reference to true emotion. So his body's able to simulate the actions involved with it, such as a laugh or something like that. But he has no way of actually linking the two together to actually experience that real emotion. So yeah, I would agree with you that this is the first time, by the way he's acting, that he's actually felt something that's different than anything he's ever simulated before, which is why he's so perplexed by it.
Exactly.
I think with the laughing thing, like, Q made him like feel it and what it felt like, it releases some endorphins or whatever, that kind of thing, and in your brain, and you feel it maybe feels good, but it wasn't necessarily happy. But, like it could be a couple different things for laughing, but, and the whole like motion of laughing and everything, because it was like a completely hysterical laugh. But this was like real emotions and feelings, and it's like a drug, and I think he wants more, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, like whatever substituted for adrenaline, he was definitely feeling that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll get to it in a minute, where he says that he felt pleasure from it. I mean, we can talk about it now, like that he was pleased, basically, at killing this Borg, because he's racist Data now.
He hates all Borg. It does open up a really, and I know we're kind of jumping around a little bit, but we are coming up to a scene in a bit where Data talks to Counselor Troy, and it makes sense because she is the ship's counselor. She is a psychologist. Like, she's there to help people process their feelings. And
we can go ahead and talk about that scene, because it's just the next scene is in between those two, and this one and that one have more in common. So, yeah, go ahead.
So, and he's talking about he says that anger is a negative emotion, and then Troy says that feelings are neither negative nor positive. They just are. And then it's what you do with them that's either negative or positive. So I actually thought, like, wow, so progressive of this show to say something that it took me 7+ years in therapy to grasp, that, like, no,
right.
Anger is not a negative emotion. Anger is anger.
And another thing she says that took me a bit in therapy is that you shouldn't suppress those feelings. If you have those feelings, they're valid. It's basically what she tells him, Even though he's an android and he's not supposed to have feelings, she wants him to know that it was okay that he did.
Right. And exactly.
This is one of the few times that she actually gets to be a counselor.
I know. Like, once they put her in a uniform, she got smart all of a sudden.
I meant to have like a note where we first see her that she's wearing like a regulation uniform, not like the dress on like she did sometimes in season 1, but with the pants and everything. And it's just like, all right.
I know. She started wearing a uniform and suddenly she got smart. So there's that. But because women are not allowed to be sexy and smart, everybody. It's one or the other. Anyway.
Well, I mean, that's because not enough people have met you and I.
That is true. That is true. But
I'm
like,
so kidding.
Sort of this
About
whole
me.
stop. Sort of this whole discussion in this episode and the next one that we'll talk about next week about how emotions simply are, and it's what you do with them that makes a difference, or that counts. And so Data then sort of admits for the first time to Troy, and he hasn't said this to anybody else, that after he killed the Borg, he had another feeling, and it was pleasure, that it felt good to kill that Borg, but that his ethical programming was basically telling him, you're not supposed to feel that way. Like, you should, that's his conscience, right? Saying, no, it's not right to take pleasure in the death of another living being.
I like that he has a built-in conscience. This ethical programming. Like, I feel like there's some humans that need that.
Yeah, we could use that, right?
Yeah. Some people need to have theirs turned up a little bit.
Right.
But I just think it's like really kind of progressive for a show in the 90s to really be talking about, feelings are your feelings, and you should. And yes, you've expressed anger once, so why not try to express it again if that's the one emotion that you felt so far? And you don't, it really, I don't know, it just really touched a chord with me to say this is so progressive for an early 90s show to say that, because I feel like now it's definitely more accepted to say things like that. But back in the 90s, and, it was sort of this whole idea of like, oh, well, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't feel that way. And you shouldn't, anger is bad. That's a bad emotion. But this first episode in particular really explores what it is to have feelings and to express those feelings.
Am I right in thinking that, I don't know if we were just about to talk about that or not, so please stop me if that's the case, but am I right in thinking that when he was talking to Deanna Troi, he's saying that, he tried to subject himself to different types of stimuli like operas and holiday programs and even erotic imagery to produce a different type of emotion. So am I right in thinking that he kind of, being that he has that conscience, if you will, that program in him, that ethical program in him, was he trying to, you know what I mean? Was he trying to find like a workaround because he knew that he really wasn't like capable of going back to that on his own?
I think you're kind of right there, Dan. I think it's a mixture of that and Data feeling
Yeah.
or Data being reluctant to return to that, because I think there was almost a bit of shame in the fact of him taking pleasure in killing another creature, that he almost felt like, I can't go back to that now. Like, right, it's wrong to revisit that.
Which is, yeah, and it's like why she asked him that in the first. So why aren't you going back to trying this? You felt this one. This one worked. Why aren't you going back to it? That's what I took from it. I just thought, it was something where his programming was telling him, you're not supposed to feel this way, so try something else,
Yeah.
I would tend to agree with you on that, Dan. I think his programming was telling him to stay away from that. And
I agree, because I feel like it was shown, because he said to Troi and to Geordi both that, what if anger's the only thing he can feel? And that, even though he's sort of feeling his ethical programming is almost making him scared that he's only going to be angry, and that would make him a bad person, and he just wants to be a good human person, and he's not any of those things.
Yeah. I actually thought that was incredibly, it was very touching in a way. Like, here is this android who is supposedly incapable of feeling things, although throughout the series it's sort of like, is he though? Because I kind of think he does feel things. The idea of like, what if I'm trying so hard to have feelings and emotions, and all I can feel is this one thing, and I don't want to just be known for being that angry guy. You know what I mean? Like, oh, there goes Data, that angry guy. All he ever is angry. Like, no person wants to be thought of that way. Like, I you know what I mean? Like, I would imagine, like, Dan, you don't want people to be like, oh, here comes Dan. He's always angry. Like that. Like, nobody wants that.
And it's interesting to think that if he thinks that he is that's the only kind of feeling he can have, that he would be that all the time. But it seems like that's what he thinks, that something in his program is telling him, now that he's felt anger, that's how he's always going to be, and yeah, who wants to be that guy?
Yeah.
I'm over here thinking about, sorry, I'm like, is that it? Yeah, I think that's what it is. Yeah. I mean, because, like, again, sorry, I guess my pause really comes from the fact that, again, I'm rewatching the show. But from what I can get from it, Data is always kind of in that constant pursuit to be more human, right? Isn't that kind of his deal?
Absolutely.
So it's like if he's able to successfully have this type of a negative feeling where it brings him not only one feeling of anger, but also that pleasure feeling. It's almost like, ooh, maybe I shouldn't even go near this then, like.
Right.
Maybe I failed. Maybe I should just stick to being the android that I was programmed to be.
Yeah, I absolutely, I totally agree with that. Like, I think that's almost like an instinctual protection of like, if this is the only thing I can feel, well, then better not to feel anything.
Yeah, but I have to agree with you, though, and that's what I was getting at before when I was talking about my appreciation for the next generation, is that, and I think you said it better, but they were definitely tackling subjects that a lot of shows weren't tackling at the time. That's what I'm getting from it just off the initial watch of, starting the rewatch again, is that they were doing these things like, like you were saying, like in the 90s, they would give you one part of it, you're experiencing the anger. They didn't give you the why. And I really appreciate that about this show. I just think that it's very progressive, and it's something that's making me want to continue watching it.
That's something I've said before, well, similar, I guess, that this show it has a lot of heart and interesting storylines and all that. It just happens to be set in space on a spaceship. It's a really good, it's got such good storylines. Yes, some of them are terrible, whatever. You can't have a show that has every single episode be amazing. I mean, I know there's people out there probably yelling out their favorite show right now, but whatever. But I think that's why it was so popular, is because so many people could watch it because